Did I show you a countdown? It's recording.
And we're opening the room, and we're a go.
So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our World Water Day webinar. And thank you so much to the panelists for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today and sharing your experience and knowledge on this topic. We appreciate it. Today is World Water Day. And if you don't know, it was created about 30 years ago to raise awareness and inspire action regarding water, how we use, conserve, and manage water. A lot of broad topics on there. And, you know, considering the region that we're located in, a lot of people think that we are very uniquely positioned, which we are, to be next to 20% of the world's fresh water in our backyard. But that's not to say that we shouldn't be smart about our water use, our management, et cetera. You know, we see areas like Waukesha and the city of Joliet that are dependent on inland aquifers. And, you know, we also see places like Flint, Michigan, and what happened recently in Ohio to sort of bring to light how important water is and how important it is to manage that water correctly. So without further ado, I'm going to dive in and introduce our panelists. We have Anna Wolf from the Center for Neighborhood Technology. If you'd like to introduce yourself, a little bit about your bio as well as your agency or your organization.
Sure, grateful to be here. Thanks, Commissioner Spyropoulos. Yeah, so my name is Anna Wolf. I'm the Director of Water Equity at the Center for Neighborhood Technology. We are just over 40-year-old organization based here in Chicago, and we do work that centers around sort of the holistic interconnection of the built environment and the natural environment. So we work on transportation, water, housing, economic development efforts. In a sort of collaborative approach. We work with across disciplines and work to ensure that the built environment and urban areas work for everyone who lives there. I work on our urban resilience team, which focuses a lot on water supply, stormwater management efforts, and the way that water interacts with housing and transportation systems. I have a planning background. I have a master's in urban planning from the University of Illinois at Chicago. So I use that lens of planning and community development to inform the water work that I do. I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you, Anna. We've got Margaret Frisbee from the Friends of the Chicago River. Margaret.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner. I'm really pleased to be here as well. This is a really important day nationally, internationally, with World Water Day and the UN Conference on Water happening right now at the UN. So I'm really honored to be a part of this panel. So I am the Executive Director of Friends of the Chicago River, and we were founded in 1979 to improve and protect the Chicago River system for people, plants, and animals. And that's 156 miles of waterway in Lake County and Cook County and all the tributary streams. And we really look at this from a watershed perspective, trying to think about what can we do across our watersheds to improve our river's health and our community health. And we work through 3 program areas. So we do education and outreach programs that build awareness and a stewardship ethic. We do on-the-ground projects that physically improve the health of the river and adjacent lands and other places in the watershed with an eye towards demonstrating what's possible. And then, of course, we will work on the long-term public policy and planning strategies that is required for long-term systemic change. And I've been with Friends for many, many years and grateful for the partnership with the district and CNT and the city, and really looking forward to hearing everyone's comments today. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. We have Joel Vieira from the Chicago Department of Water. Joel, if you could introduce yourself and a little bit about your agency, your department.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Joel Vieira. I'm the first deputy commissioner here in the Chicago Department of Water Management. Chicago Department of Water Management is the third largest department here in the city, behind only the police and the fire department. Our department maintains and refreshes about 4,200 miles of water main here in Chicago, 4,300 miles of sewer mains. We provide water to about 5 million people here in Illinois. We've got the largest filtration plant in the world. We have 2 filtration plants, 12 pumping stations. Happy to be here. This is a great event and looking forward to learn things as well. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Joel. And last but not least, my colleague, Commissioner Cam Davis. If you could tell us a little bit about your bio.
Sure. And thank you, Commissioner Spyropoulos, for chairing this today and organizing it. I also want to recognize that Brendan Rauch from my staff is on here today. And I really want to thank my fellow panelists, Anna and Margaret and Joel. Thanks for being on. Looking forward to a discussion. I don't know why my background looks reversed, whereas everybody else's looks forward. Maybe this is the heavens or the universe telling me that I'm the guy who's going to talk about history and look backwards, whereas everybody else is going to look forward and what we can do into the future, but I hope not. A quick introduction is I joined Commissioner Spyropoulos on the board in 2018. Before that, I worked in the Obama-Biden administration to help coordinate the work of 11 federal departments to invest $2+ billion in Great Lakes restoration and to be the president's liaison to Capitol Hill on all Great Lakes matters. And then before that, I was president and CEO of the Alliance for the Great Lakes, another wonderful NGO alongside of CNT and Friends of the Chicago River, partnering with them and doing good work to help organize citizens to keep being invested in the waters that we all love. I'll stop at that. Otherwise, I'll start boring people.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. And I would like to acknowledge that we are being joined by another commissioner, Commissioner Dan Pogoszelski, one of our newer commissioners. Thank you for joining, Commissioner Pogoszelski. Okay, so let's start, since we are being brought together by World Water Day. What does World Water Day mean or represent to you? And so, we're sort of looking in terms of broad, regional and national policy and where we fit into that. But we also want to leave people with some actionable items on a very local level so that because it is about, what change can you make in your life? So I think there's a lot that we can touch on if you just sort of keep that in mind when you go forward. So if we could start with Joel.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I think today is a good opportunity for the water department, obviously myself and other staff, to sort of refocus on the bigger picture here. Sometimes that gets lost. We've got the largest filtration plant in the world here, and we got all these water mains we're maintaining. But then I think at the end of the day, we tend to forget how important this resource that we have, Lake Michigan, really is. When you think about it, I think we mentioned earlier that 20% of the freshwater, the world's freshwater, is right here. That comes with a significant fiduciary duty to the environment and to our residents and our customers. So for us, this day is just an opportunity for us to refocus on really this bigger picture and just appreciating the resources that we have, because sometimes we lose sight of the fact that other parts of the world or even other parts of our country don't have this luxury. So it's a responsibility and it's an opportunity for us to take into account that responsibility. So that, I think, is what it means for me and for the water department here.
Thank you, Joel. Margaret, would you like to weigh in and let us know what does World Water Day represent or mean to you?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think that World Water Day is an opportunity to focus people's attention on this most precious of resources. You know, we tend to think of water in buckets. We have a bucket that's rainwater and a bucket that's drinking water and a bucket that's maybe a lake or a river or sewage. And we really need to rethink how we do that. And I feel like World Water Day is an opportunity to think about what it means to bring water under the one water umbrella, right? So that it's all water that we treat really carefully and treasure. And, you know, we've designed systems that throw water away, and really we should be protecting it. So getting to kind of the individual point of view, I think, you know, we ask people to do active water conservation. So, you know, shorter showers, having efficient appliances, or participating in the partnership program we have with the MWRD, Overflow Action Days, which helps treasure water and reduce combined sewer overflows. But also thinking, you know, more globally, like, you know, being aware of water in the world and thinking about the water footprint of corporate America. Who's using how much water and for what? And are people being responsible? And do we have public policies that support taking care of our water? Are we, you know, really thinking about every single precious drop? And when we look at from our perspective, from, you know, our unique mission of Friends of the Chicago River, we have to think about how clean and healthy our rivers and lakes are, and what does that mean for human health, and what does that mean for aquatic health, especially at a time where we know that aquatic life is suffering at a great rate, and we need to invest in our communities to have healthy, safe water for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots to think about. Anna, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. For me, World Water Day is a reminder that access to clean water for drinking and recreating and good stormwater management shouldn't be dictated by where you live or how much money you make or the color of your skin. There's such a huge conversation about that sort of very thing at the start of the pandemic, right? Access to clean, affordable drinking water as a human right, access to, you know, good stormwater management, especially when you're sheltering in place, and if you have mold in your home, that creates a layer of health impact on top of a respiratory crisis. So days like today are a good reminder for me to recenter on those ideas that humans are at the root of how we think about and work towards water, especially in urban environments, in the work that CMT does. And it shouldn't be in the aftermath of a tragedy or a crisis that cities sort of recommit to new programs and practices. That days like today are a good reminder of sort of continual calls to action to center on those topics. All of those aspects, right? Affordable water, clean water, stormwater management require the technical in the weeds deep dives and analysis that create policies and programs. But I think it's helpful to take a step back and get a broader view of why we're doing the work, to ensure that, as my co-panelist already said, that all individuals in the country and globally have equitable access to good water resource management.
Absolutely. You know, not being reactionary, but being proactive in terms of, this is a great day to be reminded that we need to be better at that. Commissioner Davis, what does World Water Day mean to you?
World Water Day is every day to me and to my family as a water advocate. And one of the things that I think of when I think of World Water Day is the importance of helping the next generation understand their issues and obligations and commitments and priorities when it comes to water. I hope you can see it. I'm sharing my screen with you all. This is my son Sage on the bottom corner, my daughter Rio sitting on top of one of our brand new MWRD rain barrels that we use to take water, harvest water off of the roof of our house and use it around our small yard. Some of the research shows that our biggest water use is actually outside the house, and that is watering lawns for those of you who still do that kind of thing. It's also used for growing vegetables and all kinds of stuff that we do outside. I tend to use the water that we harvest off our roof collected in rain barrels that you can buy at MWRD and have them delivered to you for under 50 bucks. And use that water around the yard. And that way, not only do we save money, but as a way to kind of honor World Water Day all year round, but also to help teach the next generation about the importance of our stewarding our water as well.
Oh, that's great. Training the next generation of water leaders. Excellent. So you're all part of these great organizations that have done so much, and you have a lot of programs that you're working on, have been working on. I'd like to ask, like, what are you currently working on or interested in, and the impact on water? If you could talk about, whatever you'd like to talk about regarding that. So if we could start with Margaret.
There we go. Well, thank you again. And that's a good question. I really appreciate it. Friends of the Chicago River over the last 3 years has developed a group that it's called the Greater Chicago Watershed Alliance. And we organized it in order to work across boundaries, across jurisdictions, and break down the traditional walls and silos, if you will, to look at how we could maximize the use of nature-based solutions across the Chicago-Calumet River watershed, and bring with that all of the co-benefits that using nature-based, harnessing nature brings with it. And so, the Water Reclamation District is a partner, the City of Chicago is a partner, the Lake County Stormwater Management Commission is an commission is a partner, CMAP, Alliance for the Great Lakes, CNT. We've got just a tremendous group of 20 partners who have come together to look at how can we really double down on investing in nature. And that's something that we think, we know studies show improves public health, and it also at a time where biodiversity is under great threat and we're facing the climate crisis, that this is important work and we need to do now. So through this process, we developed the need for a decision support tool, and we developed a project that we just finished and launched last week, which is called the Natural Solutions Tool. And it is a searchable map that uses 84 data layers centered on equity and public health and biodiversity and water and resiliency and connectivity. And the idea is that you could use this tool and Google, as a verb, anywhere in the watersheds. And in fact, we expanded it to 1,300 square miles because the interest of our partners was so great. So right now it's 176 municipalities, 42 sub-watersheds, and nearly 1.5 million parcels. And basically what you can do, it's a searchable map, and you can get online, you can log in through chicagoriver.org, our website, and you just put in a password, put in your email, and you can find out where there is need for trees, where there is community flooding that nature-based solutions could offset, where there are indicators of bad public health or lack of green space or high need for connectivity. And you could create a vision of where you would like to invest in green infrastructure and using nature to harness, to basically focus on these problems. And so we want to work to focus strategic investments on nature-based green infrastructure through this as a council, but also have municipalities and community groups and individuals look at how they could use the tool to do the same thing. And one of the great things about the tool is it actually prioritizes and allows you to choose what you want, but it's got a very easy to discover and use communities that have been disinvested, communities with a lack of green space. And so it's just basically signed up for people to use it in such a way that you can see opportunities to invest, and then we can also collaborate together to drive the most money possible to it. So really excited about this Natural Solutions tool. We're doing trainings to teach people how to use it. And I think it's a game changer for the region and how we look at how we use land.
So I can vouch for that. I have seen this tool in action, and I think it's a great resource. And I hope that you're doing like a road tour to bring it to those 176 municipalities that you spoke of, because I think there's a lot that can be utilized in developing their own plans on site. So that's great that you've developed that. Anna, did you want to speak to what you're currently working on or interested in that would have an impact on water?
Yeah, absolutely. I also just want to shout out to the tool that Margaret just just highlighted. It's such an exciting resource for all the folks that work in water in this region. I want to talk about a program that is called Nature Near Transit. But before I do that, I just want to also give a shout out to my colleagues who worked on the urban resilience or urban flooding baseline tool, which is sort of a complementary, smaller scale tool to the one that French just rolled out. It's focused on the south suburbs, and it looks at the data that sort of informs that where is it flooding, why is it flooding, and who is impacted. So we have some of the same data layers that that exist in the I'm sorry, is it the natural what's the name of the tool again? Natural
Nature-based solutions.
Yeah, natural solutions tool. But we also have added an element of community data collection. So we worked with community partners in the south suburbs to actually go out into the field after storm events and take photos of areas that flood and bring that data also into the tool to add that layer of qualitative data capture. So both of these types of resources are super rich in understanding both what the data can tell us about where it's flooding and what solutions might do good work or might work well, and also the qualitative sort of lived experience on the ground information collection. And then just really quickly, I want to talk, as I said, about this Nature Near Transit program, which blends nature-based solutions near transportation areas in Chicago. It's a partnership between Center for Neighborhood Technology, Elevated Chicago, a coalition of groups that work on equitable transit-oriented development in the city, and a number of other partners. And the work really highlights the benefits of blending multiple disciplines to create impactful outcomes. So it's small scale, scattered site, green stormwater infrastructure, nature-based solutions in a few sites across the city. So we're not necessarily looking for major stormwater benefit impacts, but we are getting a sort of expansive understanding of what these small scale investments can do when they are multiplied and sort of expanded across the city. And we're working with designers and artists and community-based partners who might not otherwise have worked on stormwater projects, but are being brought together to think about creative ways of solving for small scale stormwater management efforts at sites that you might not think about investing in stormwater benefits because they're built out or they don't stand out as like the perfect place to invest, but there are places that people move through. So we're working with a church to improve the entranceway to the parking lot that floods a bunch. And so we're trying to do some upstream stormwater capture there with small bioretention projects. We're working with a health Tapestry 360 health service provider in Albany Park in their parking lot. Albany Park is super built out. So there's not a lot of place for stormwater management capture beyond the amazing TARP work that MWRD is doing to expand stormwater collection in that neighborhood. So we were working with this group that already uses their parking lot for community events and we're sort of creating modular green stormwater infrastructure features that can act both as a stormwater management benefit, but also assets to the lot during those community events that happen during the summer. So just wanted to highlight some of the ways that projects related to water don't just have to touch on water, but can also capture the broader benefits that we get when we naturalize urban spaces.
Absolutely. And for people who are furiously writing all this down, we will be sending out a email to attendees with the links for all of these programs that are being mentioned today, so that you can use it, share it, and do more research for yourself as well. So thank you for that, Anna. Joel, would you like to talk about any programs at Department of Water and the impact regarding water of those programs?
Sure. So thank you, Commissioner. So for us here in the Department of Water Management, probably one of the most important exercises that we do every year is developing our capital improvement plan for the upcoming year. It's a month-long effort. It involves us. It involves our engineering staff, contractors, consultants that we have. One of the things that's critically important is to understand what the impacts of the water department's CIP program are to conservation. So when we do a water main replacement, one of the things we look at is the age of a water main and its leak and break history. We do the same thing when we do a sewer main replacement. We look at the age of a sewer and we look at its leak and break history. Historically, what we've sort of planned is a replacement of the system at like a 1% rate each year. And while that's good, that just sort of maintains the status quo. And we don't want to just maintain the status quo. We want to improve so that we can improve on our conservation efforts. So one of the things that we are doing this year for our next cycle of CIP is looking at just that. How can we increase what we're doing? How can we be smarter? How can we be faster in this day of increasing costs and lower revenues? But it's not looking at the status quo, it's gaining above and beyond the status quo. I think the trees were just mentioned on one of the points here. What we're doing is we are going to start doing a lot of trenchless. We're going to be using trenchless technology for lead service line replacement and other capital maintenance and repair initiatives so that we reduce the number of trees that we have to take down when we're doing work. We know trees are important, not just to the residents, but also to the water environment as well. So we're working on trenchless technology. We're trying to improve our CIP. We're looking to see what we can do to improve our Space to Grow program, which is a partnership with the MWRD and the Chicago Public School System. I think our agreements are expiring and folks are working on that. So I think it's a good opportunity to maybe hit the reset on that agreement to see maybe potentially how we can expand it. So those are like some of the key things that we're working on here in the water department.
Joel, I'm not sure if you mentioned, did you talk about water and wastewater being like a unified system?
Yes. So it's the same resource. It's Lake Michigan, and whatever we're purifying here at the water plant, eventually it's going to become wastewater. So it's the same system. You can't improve one without improving the other. If one falls behind, the other one's going to fall behind because it's the same system. And I think that's another thing for the mission and vision here in the water department. We have to sort of reset that expectation that we're talking about the same system. And then our regional partners like the MWRD and the folks on the call, we're all part of the same team here. We're all dealing with the same resources. So it's going to be really important going forward that we sort of re-envision how we work collectively and how we're more transparent with our residents so that we build the trust we need, because going forward, we're certainly going to need to make wise investments in our infrastructure, and it's going to impact our residents. And it all comes at a price. But again, this is a really important resource. I mean, outside of public safety, I can't think of anything more important than water and wastewater functions.
I agree with you, Joel. Commissioner Davis, would you like to talk about what you're working on and important impact on water?
Sure. There are three programs that I think are worth mentioning right now, and each of them involves a role for all of us. And I'm going to kind of start from the top down and then work my way to the ground level with all of them. And you heard the first one I'm going to mention is water equity. And I think you heard Anna mention this before, and Margaret, and I know through Joel's work at the Department of Water Management, lead pipe replacement also touches on equity, making sure that no community is disproportionately impacted by either water quality or flooding. And so to that point, just not too long ago, our Board of Commissioners passed a water equity resolution. To my knowledge, it's the first one of any that was passed in the country. And it was essentially to recognize that water and access to water and to sanitary needs through sewage treatment is a basic human right. Since this time, we've had other cities around the region both pass a similar kind of resolution, if not exactly the same one, following MWRD's lead, and other communities consider passing this resolution. But essentially what it does is make sure that we're on record as saying that access to water and wastewater services is a basic human right. What inspired this? And this goes to one of the things that Joel mentioned before. I was hearing more and more as I do and did talks with others that there was greater interest in selling water from Lake Michigan to generate revenue for the city. And I thought that that was an ill-founded idea. Water levels go up, they go down. And as we know, once we start messing with nature, nature messes with us, and we don't want that. Plus, it's our front door and we all care deeply about it. If anybody would like a copy of this resolution, please feel free to reach out to my office or Commissioner Spyropoulos. I know you voted for this, Commissioner Pogoszelski. I'm sure you would have voted about it and for it had you been on board at the same time, but reach out to our offices and we can get you a copy if you would like. So we want to make sure that we're doing our fair share to protect all of our communities, given whatever limitations they may have right now. The other program I want to mention, and then I'll get to the third, is one that Joel just mentioned, the Space to Grow program. It's for those who don't know what it is, it essentially antes up dollars from the Department of Water Management, Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, and the Chicago public school system to fund green infrastructure work. That's the use of nature to manage stormwater in schoolyards inside the city of Chicago. It's been a wildly popular program. I really credit Open Lands and the Healthy Schools campaign as being part of our partners on that. We want to make sure we are taking that program and not just limiting it to the city of Chicago. Right now, that program does not exist, nor do the suburbs around Chicago have the same benefit that schoolyards in the city of Chicago have. And so with the help of Commissioner Spyropoulos and others, we passed a resolution, a measure about 2 years ago, putting us on the path of finding ways to expand a schoolyard green infrastructure program to our 120 plus suburbs around the city, because stormwater really doesn't respect boundaries. It's not just a problem in Chicago. It's a problem in our Southland communities. It's a problem in some of our Northwest communities outside the city and many other locations too. So that's something that I continue to work on as the chair of our Stormwater Committee with the help of Commissioner Yumika Brown, who's the vice chair of that committee. The third and final thing I want to mention that's really important, and it ties into equity and stormwater management, is urban farming. Not a lot of people know this, but MWRD is the second largest public property owner in Cook County, second only to the forest preserves. So we have a lot of land. We have a lot of land that hasn't really been maintained for a while. That's no criticism of anybody. It just is. How might we, and I pose this as a question, how might we find certain tracts of land, MWRD property, and open those up for better maintenance so that they can optimize stormwater capture, so they can help fight climate change, and so that we can provide a food source to communities around the county that need it most. There are a lot of communities that experience food deserts, so they don't have ready access to inexpensive, healthy food. how can MWRD play a role in not just reducing stormwater, but also fighting climate change, also strengthening food equity? I think there are ways for MWRD to do even more and even better with the resources that it has to ameliorate problems across the county that go beyond just kind of the traditional thinking. And I know that Joel's boss, Commissioner Chang, and I have talked about that. We're eager to find ways to try to pilot a project or two that can combine the benefits of urban farming with the benefits of stormwater capture, climate change fighting, and do so in a way that will aid in our need for better equity around the county.
So thank you, Commissioner Davis, for that. Lots of things that we are and will be working on for sure. And I would like to acknowledge another one of our colleagues, Commissioner Patricia Teresa Flynn, has just joined us on the webinar. So welcome, Commissioner Flynn. Thank you for joining us. And so with that, with regarding what we're currently working on at MWRD, I would like to delve into the area of PFAS. It's something that everyone's talking about now. Lots of media coverage. And so, it's something that's obviously very important that we try to manage and eventually eliminate. And so I'm interested in hearing what the panelists have to say about that. And, no pressure if you don't have anything to say about it. But I am interested specifically Department of Water, and then obviously, anyone else that wants to weigh in. You want to start, Joel? Not trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah, so I'll have to pass on this one because that's a hardcore water quality thing here in the water department. And we have in this department, we have more people with advanced degrees and PhDs than any other department here in the city, and they're all working in the water quality section. Our commissioner is one of the top, I'm going to argue, one of the top 10 water quality professionals in the country. So PFAS and any other initiatives we need to do to make sure that our water is the safest in the country, I sleep very well knowing that we have the right talent here in this department to sort of make sure that that is being done in accordance with every law, and that we're doing any pilots or any other initiatives that we need to make sure that we're keeping on top of things. But I have to defer to those folks on that particular topic for the moment.
Okay. Anna, would you like to weigh in on this topic?
Well, not on the water quality specifics. I know that it's a forever chemical, and it's deeply important that we figure out ways to keep our water supply safe. I think the piece that I would highlight is the importance of proactive and transparent communication about the impacts to communities, especially those who are already suffering environmental injustices in other water and non-water related ways. CNT does a lot of work with community-based groups in the Southeast side. We work with Olga Bautista and her organization, Southeast Environmental Task Force, Kim Wasserman at El Vejo, Naomi Davis from Blacks and Green, and all of these individuals are so rooted in water issues in their community, and I think do a great job of communicating or trying to understand and take the pulse of what local residential concerns are. And so connecting those concerns and making sure that there's a flow of information both ways from the experts in the water departments around the country back to the communities, and having that arrow go both ways, I think is critical for both solving these issues and making sure that there's trust between residents and the governments that are keeping our water clean and drinkable.
Margaret, do you want to?
Well, I mean, I think some good things have been said, and I guess what I would add is that we cannot overstate how important it is to address PFAS. And then other things that I think people are unaware of that end up in our water, right? So we know that we have a huge problem with chlorides, right? So road salt in the winter ends up in our waterways, and that's another chemical that's permanent, right? You can pollute a lot of water with a little tiny bit of salt. And so I think it's incumbent upon all of us to help people understand how we're all connected to the bodies of water that we recreate in, we drink from, and just to think about the connectivity and then really stepping up for understanding what the problems are, preventing chemicals from reaching these water bodies, and doing a really good job not waiting to be told what to look for, but to try and find out for ourselves. There's so many chemicals in use that are not regulated by the federal government, and what can we do about that as a society? And I think that's a collective action we have to really discuss. Anyway.
Absolutely. Education of what is in our natural resources is critical. And so, I think that we in our respective agencies play a role in that and trying to provide information for people to be informed consumers and informed residents of their respective communities. Commissioner Davis, did you want to weigh in at all on the PFAS topic?
Sure. Just backing up so that people understand what PFAS is. It's the acronym is PFAS, and it stands for a family of chemicals that does not readily break down in the environment and can cause both environmental and human health problems. Two thoughts on this. One is on the more pragmatic personal level, and then move to the policy level. On the personal side, I think there's one thing that we can all do, which is to try to prevent the use of PFAS-related materials and items in our own household and in our own businesses. For example, PFAS has been used in nonstick cookware. So if you have Teflon pans, for example, consider finding a way to properly dispose of those. And in the future, try not to use those kinds of Teflon nonstick coatings in your cookware. That is part of why 97% or so of Americans now have PFAS showing up in their bloodstreams. PFAS is used in cosmetics. It's also used in clothing to create water resistance in clothing. It's also used in fire-resistant materials, whether that's in clothing, bedding, furniture, things like that. And of course, it's used in firefighting foam. So alternatives are on the way for PFAS, and in some ways they are already here. And I think one of the things, the first step we need to do to undertake is to make sure that we're not adding to these historic problems by going with safer alternatives to PFAS in all of those different uses, plus many more that I didn't have the chance to mention. So that's a thing that we can do around the home and in our businesses. On the policy side, the Board of Commissioners at the Water Reclamation District recently passed a resolution calling for our trade associations to help with efforts to recoup costs by MWRD and other public utilities across the state from manufacturers for PFAS-related expenses that we're incurring on behalf of taxpayers. I think everybody on this video conference pays taxes through their property taxes that helps fund MWRD. Right now, we are all footing the burden of these expenses related to PFAS. We shouldn't have to do that as taxpayers. Manufacturers created the problem. Manufacturers have a responsibility to help fund utilities like MWRD, like the Department of Water Management, so that those costs are not being shoved over onto us as taxpayers. And that's really important that we think about and that we act on, because if we have to continue to foot the burden for dealing with PFAS over the coming decades, it will total up to be a very substantial bill for us to help combat a problem that MWRD, Department of Water Management, did not create itself. So I really want to thank Commissioner Spyropoulos, Commissioner Flynn. I see that Rolando Favala's on the call, his boss, Commissioner Corral Sepulveda, and all of our colleagues voted for this resolution that I think is a fiscally conservative yet environmentally progressive measure to take.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. As Margaret mentioned, it's a complex issue, but I am encouraged by the fact that we are seeing conversation at a federal, state, and local level on this topic, because that's how it's going to be managed, sort of in a collective way. And again, I'm going to mention that MWRD has a great information sheet on PFAS. We'll include that in the email that we send out to attendees, so people can have that, because education is important on this topic. I'd like to ask, looks like time is starting to tick. So many topics I wanted to talk about regarding water recycling, flooding, climate change. So I will just throw those out there, and whichever you would like to talk about, please feel free, because like I said, time is passing by really quickly. As well as, you know, this year's World Water Day theme is about recognizing and responding to change, encouraging people to take action in their own lives to change the way they use, consume, and manage water. So if there's anything, like I said, actionable items that people can use in their daily life, because every, you know, small action can make a difference. So I'll just throw all that out there. I know it's a lot. And let's start with Joel to see you know, what he'd like to cover.
So I think some of the things I'd like to cover are what we, the water department, have been doing in terms of conservation efforts. So I talked a little bit about the CIP, Capital Improvement Program, and how at the end of the day, what that is helping us do is basically cut down on the leaks, the leakage in the system, so that we conserve as much water as possible. Another important aspect of that is installing water meters, so that you know how much water you're actually consuming. So for a long time, the city had been, most residents here in the city had an estimated water bill. We started up a meter program that went very aggressively for a number of years. We had to stop that at the end of last year because of lead service line replacements that will now be required for meter the initiatives we're working on for lead service line replacements. So we've started a couple of things. Another important thing on this is river protection. And I know Margaret's been working with some of the folks here in the water department on that, and some other folks in the administration. And those efforts are going to continue. You know, I know there's an election happening here in the city, but, you know, we're committed to, you know, protecting our environment and continuing to work with our partners. We're also working on smaller initiatives at a homeowner level to try to improve conservation efforts. So we're going to roll out a water disconnection pilot, where we're going to promote and help people pay for downspout disconnection, which we know is a significant component of the flooding problems that we have here in the city. And I think we had a couple of flooding instances last year where we had some really heavy rainstorms, really in two parts of the city. We had one on the south side in July, and we had one on the north side in September. So it's starting to hit home to folks that climate change is real, and that we each have to start doing our part. We're starting off with these small initiatives in our capital program. We're going to hope to ramp it up, but it's a long-term commitment. And we'll see where we are in a couple of years. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. Margaret?
Well, I scarcely know where to begin, but I think there is a lot of opportunity. And looking at the theme of change, I would say right now I'm in my office downtown looking at the still too green Chicago River. And when I look out the window, I see opportunity. And I see opportunity to capture water and to treasure it, and that Like what I would love to have people imagine is this green region that we can, Commissioner Davis is talking about the water reclamation district using district land to absorb stormwater and create other opportunities. And we can be doing that everywhere. Obviously CNT, Anna described many projects that they're involved in, but we as a region, we as a species have to rethink how we see land and how we see opportunity, and that we need to think about water as this treasured resource that we want to keep local and stop throwing away. So I feel like that is the change of the day, is to really look at this one water opportunity and all of the ways that we can capture it and have it pay us back in many, many ways. And I've been playing with this idea, trying to stop using the word natural resource, because I feel resource implies we can use it up. And I haven't come up with a better way, and I'm sure there's many great thinkers who have. But I think just, the Chicago River system is a really good example. If you change the way you think about something, you can change what the outcome is. And the river system, on average, as we know, in the 1970s, there was sewage in the river every 3 days. And now, of course, it's this lovely resource with canoers and kayaks and people swimming. And we started our summer float party a couple of years ago, and last year had over 300 people participating, floating down the North Branch. And those things are possible for all of our water resources all around the world, if we think together and work together. And so that's the call to action, I would say, is think about water a different way, and how we can see differently, so we can believe there's a different outcome than what we're used to seeing.
Absolutely. I know that at the Water Reclamation District, we have shifted to resource recovery. We're still using the word resource, but let us know when you find another word for that. But I think it's important because, as Joel mentioned, the sort of one water concept of not dealing with them in sectors, but looking at it holistically. And I think that that's where like water recycling comes in, and managing flooding with natural resources so that you reuse that water in another way. So I think we're seeing that sort of shift. So people are changing the way that they see water. And that's part of what I see as our job at the district, is to give that information out to the public so that they can make that shift as well. Anna, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, absolutely. And also feel overwhelmed by the number of things that could be talked about right now. I guess leaning into the climate change piece, I think all of us in this region are, as Joel mentioned, it's becoming more and more, we're confronted with it on a seasonal, annual basis. We know that climate change impacts are going to continue to hit Northeastern Illinois, the rest of the Great Lakes, and big and swift action is needed to counter those impacts. And it has to be innovative at this point. I think it can't just rely on a one size fits all solution, because the issue is evolving as well. Something that's come up frequently in our work is the concept of multi-solving. So looking at capital investments or any kind of investment in a time of climate change has to solve for or address multiple issues at once, which means the things we're investing in have to rise to meet that challenge. So that could look like investing in capacity at cities to intentionally cross-collaborate so that departmental learnings are shared, and informing better investments with multiple benefits, solving for transportation, water, health, making sure that there's a shared alignment of resources to both have that peer collaboration, but also more impactful sort of efficient use of resources. It could also look like investing in programs that are built to be more efficient in service delivery. So for instance, comprehensive home rehab efforts that bundle lead service line replacement, energy and water efficiency efforts, decarbonization efforts, flood management, so that the homeowner is benefiting in a more efficient way and that resources are shared, again, across multiple programs. Notably, that administrative burden is big to do, cross collaborative efforts like that, but that's the kind of action that I think we'll need to solve for climate change and address things beyond just the stormwater management efforts or issues, but sort of community livability as a whole.
Okay, thank you for that. Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, I really like, Anna, what you just said, and Margaret as well. What you just said with multi-solving is another word for what we call co-benefits. And what I mentioned earlier today about optimizing the use of MWRD land to better capture stormwater while improving water quality, fighting climate change, and also helping to right the ship on food inequities is a great example of multi-solving or co-benefits. So I'd love to find a way to deal with that. I'll close with these two thoughts. Number one, I think the Chicago area has a natural resource. I'm going to use that term very purposefully. And I'm not speaking about a water body. I'm talking about us. I think the collaboration and the strength of organizations like CNT, Friends of the Chicago River, DWM, Alliance for the Great Lakes, and so many others is what gives me a lot of hope that we can move in the direction of undertaking co-benefits and engaging in multi-solving, multi-problem solving. So we got to keep on it. We got to keep on each other to keep moving in that direction. I think the big challenge for us is it's very easy to get stuck in our day-to-day work that we just have to get done. It's also very easy to get stuck in what's happening right now. I try mentally to almost pretend I've got a telescope in my mind, and I always try to look 10, 25, 50, 100 years out and try to anticipate not just what we need right here, right now, but what this county and all of us who live in it, our children and their children are going to need 100 years from now. It's not easy to take out that mental telescope and look into the future like that. But these problems are, they're too thorny to just kind of drift from day to day and just kind of see how it goes. I think we have to be much more proactive than that. And that's not easy. That involves change. And I think change sometimes scares people. But if we want to make this county more resilient, equitably, socially, environmentally than it is now, we have to do that. Thanks, Mariyana. Thanks, Commissioner Spyropoulos, for putting this together.
I do have a question. Someone has asked me to ask about the status of what used to be called Asian carp. I believe we're calling it Kopi or Kopi.
Invasive carp. Too.
Does anyone want to, Margaret, would that be something that you can weigh in on the status of how the Asian carp population is?
Well, I mean, and Commissioner Davis, if you're more up to date than me, but I do know that the Brandon Road Lock and Dam is moving forward. And that is really the large infrastructure investment that we're making to prevent the potential spread for the invasive carp species that we're concerned about. My understanding is that there'll be some that's in process, it's approved, it's slowly moving forward. And that once it is up and running, we've learned that they will actually take out those electric barriers at Romeoville, which will enable more use of the river system in the region, because right now, of course, it's a protected area, there's electricity in the water. But the DNR has really done a good job keeping the partners focused, looking at science, using research to understand what the carp are doing, and also fishing them out. And so the pressure still remains for this very important issue, but I think collectively, and again, we've mentioned partnership and collaboration again and again here. And so looking at this Great Lakes states, the provinces of Canada, it has remained a priority. And because of that, I don't know that we'll ever solve aquatic invasive species as an issue, but I think this one is in a place where it's going in a direction that we are glad to see.
And the only thing I'll add, Commissioner, is that this is another area where I think we have some opportunity for co-benefits as well. Asian carp can be and are being fished out of the river. The best way to control them is through biological means, suppressing those populations. They can be used for pet food. They can be used for human food. They're not bottom feeders like common carp are. They can be used for fertilizer. Those have value. And I think all of us know that it would be great if we could find ways to create more jobs within the state of Illinois. Here is a wonderful example of what I'll consider to be a raw material or a natural resource, invasive carp, that can be used for all of those things to be able to not just help save our river systems, but also to help build the economic resilience of the state as well. But having spent 18 hours a day on this one when it was first popping, and I was part of the Obama administration, this is one that I continue to just dream of almost in my sleep, because it is such a big deal.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. And just want to thank Anna Wolf from CNT, Margaret Frisbee from Friends of the Chicago River, Joel Vieira from Department of Water Management, Commissioner Davis from MWRD, and all the attendees. Thank you very much for spending time with us today. We hope we shared some interesting information on this 2023 World Water Day, and hope you found some actionable items to do your part to protect our water environment. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to staff, Tom, Renee, and Jocelyn, and Brendan for all your hard work in putting this together. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.